Hi, I'm Natalie, 28, and for most of my life, I craved acceptance from a family who never truly saw me. Our yearly gathering at the lake house was supposed to be a break, but my brother, Kyle, had other ideas. What he called a harmless prank. That day left me writhing in pain while my family just rolled their eyes. They always dismissed my suffering as over the top, but this time, the MRI results would expose their denial once and for all. If you've ever felt overlooked by your family, please hit like and subscribe. Before I go on, tell me in the comments if you've had to fight to be believed when you were genuinely hurting. Growing up in the Henderson home, you quickly learned your place and mine was always at the bottom. My dad, Richard, a successful, perpetually grim investment banker, made it clear his main emotion towards me was disappointment. My mom, Diane, a real estate agent obsessed with appearances, was a master at subtly comparing me to everyone else, always unfavorably. Then there was Kyle, my brother, 3 years my senior and the undisputed golden child. In my parents' eyes, Kyle was everything I wasn't. He was a star athlete, bringing home trophies and scholarships. His grades, while not stellar, were acceptable because of his football prowess. Every family conversation inevitably circled back to Kyle's latest achievements. Meanwhile, my artistic talents and later my graphic design career were treated as cute hobbies, certainly nothing worth celebrating. Our childhood home in suburban Boston felt like two different worlds under one roof. Kyle's room was a shrine of medals, trophies, and sports gear. My parents spared no expense for his equipment, private coaching, or team trips. My room, on the other hand, was plain and practical. When I asked for art supplies, I was told we needed to budget carefully, despite my dad's high salary that afforded us a comfortable upper-middle-class lifestyle. The dynamic between Kyle and me was set early. His favorite pastime was pranks, which I experienced as pure torment. When I was 7, he tripped me on our wooden staircase. I tumbled. 8 steps, spraining my wrist, my parents' reaction. Boys will be boys. At 10, he locked me in the basement storage closet for 3 hours while my parents were out. I was hysterical by the time they returned, but Kyle laughed it off as just playing around. And somehow I was punished for overreacting. Physical pain became something I was expected to silently endure. When Kyle threw a baseball at my back, leaving a palm-sized bruise, my dad told me to toughen up. When he pushed me off my bike as a joke, tearing open my knee on the gravel, my mom was more worried about the blood staining my new jeans than my actual injury. The pattern was constant. Kyle hurt me. I expressed pain, and somehow I was blamed for disrupting family harmony. My attempts to speak up were met with eye rolls and accusations of being dramatic. By my teenage years, I'd learned to internalize both physical and emotional pain. I began questioning my own feelings. Was I really as oversensitive as they claimed? Was the pain truly as bad as it felt? This self-doubt followed me into adulthood, making me apologize for even basic needs and emotions. After college, I moved to Chicago and built a life as a graphic designer. The distance offered some healing, and I began setting boundaries, protecting my growing self-worth. I limited visits home to major holidays and occasional family events, making interactions more manageable. I found professional success creating award-winning campaigns and eventually landing a senior role at a respected agency. None of this impressed my family, but it gave me financial independence and the confidence to subtly start standing up for myself. The Lake Tahoe vacation was a 5-year tradition since my parents bought their lakefront summer home. The annual week-long gathering included my parents, Kyle, sometimes with a girlfriend, and occasionally extended family. I always approached these trips with a mix of hope and dread. Maybe this would be the year they'd see me as an equal, worthy of respect. Maybe this would be the year Kyle would act like an adult, not the bully he'd always been. This particular summer, I nearly declined using a big work project as an excuse. But something pushed me to go. Maybe it was that persistent, childlike hope for family acceptance that never truly dies, no matter how many disappointments pile up. So I boarded the plane from Chicago to Reno, rented a car, and made the scenic drive to the lake house. Anxiety growing with every mile. The property itself was stunning, a 3-story cedar cabin with floor-to-ceiling. Windows overlooking Lake Tahoe's crystal blue water. A private dock extended into the lake with a boathouse full of jet skis, kayaks, and other water toys my dad collected but rarely used. Surrounding pines offered privacy, creating the illusion our family existed in its own little world. Under different circumstances, it would have been paradise. I arrived Friday afternoon, the last to join. My mom greeted me with her usual once-over, noting I looked tired and needed highlights. My dad barely glanced up from his newspaper, offering a distracted hello. Kyle was already on the dock with his latest girlfriend, Vanessa, a personal trainer, with a permanent smile, who, I'd soon realize, had no clue about our family dynamics. The first dinner followed the usual script. My mom asked superficial questions about my job, but zoned out when I answered. My dad dominated the conversation with golf stories and business wins. Kyle interjected with jokes at my expense, thinly, disguised as harmless teasing. I smiled through gritted teeth, reminding myself it was only for a week. I could keep the peace for 7 days. That night, in the guest room, I unpacked and gazed out at the moonlight on the lake. The scene was so beautiful, so peaceful, it seemed impossible anything could disturb it. I took deep breaths, using the mindfulness techniques my therapist taught me. I could navigate this visit with grace and self-respect, enjoy the natural beauty while maintaining emotional distance. At least, that was the plan. I quickly texted my best friend Emma, before bed, just arrived. Everyone is exactly the same. Wish me luck. Her immediate reply, remember, you are not the problem. Call me if you need a reality check. I fell asleep, clutching my phone, grateful for that distant lifeline to sanity. Saturday morning was bright and beautiful, a perfect summer day. The lake was calm, reflecting the mountains like a mirror. Birds chirped, and the air smelled of fresh water and pine. For a brief moment, sipping coffee on the deck alone, I felt peaceful. Family breakfast was surprisingly pleasant. My mom made pancakes, fruit, and bacon. Everyone was still in good spirits, probably because the vacation had just begun and tensions hadn't built up yet. Kai was still asleep, which definitely helped the calm atmosphere. My dad even asked about a client of mine, remembering I'd mentioned landing a big sportswear account. It wasn't warmth, but it was acknowledgement, and I took it gladly. By mid-morning, I started to believe this vacation might be different. My mom and I walked along the lakeshore, collecting interesting stones and actually having a conversation that didn't involve criticism. She seemed interested when I explained my latest design project, and I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe at 58, she was finally seeing me as an adult with a valuable life and career. That fragile hope shattered when Kyle emerged for lunch, bleary-eyed and already grumpy. He sauntered onto the deck where we were setting up sandwiches and salads, Vanessa trailing uncomfortably behind him. It took less than 5 minutes for him to start. "What's with that haircut, Nat? You look like you're trying to be 20 again," he said, piling food onto his plate. "You're almost 30, right? Maybe time to grow up with your style." I instinctively touched my recently cut bob, a style my own hairdresser had praised as sophisticated and flattering. My mom glanced at me, then quickly away, her earlier warmth vanishing. My dad chuckled, emboldening Kyle further. "And those sandals look like something a tourist would wear," he continued, pointing at my perfectly normal leather sandals. "Are you going on a jungle safari later?" Vanessa looked mortified, glancing between Kyle and me with growing discomfort. I could tell she was seeing a side of him she hadn't encountered before. "I think her sandals are cute," she offered quietly, which earned her a sharp look from Kyle. "You don't have to defend her," he said. "She knows I'm just kidding around, right, Nat? We've always been like this." I forced a smile and changed the subject, asking about their afternoon plans. The conversation shifted, but the damage was done. The familiar knot of tension had returned to my stomach, and my mother's earlier friendliness had been replaced with cool distance, as though she was preemptively siding with Kyle in a conflict that had barely begun. After lunch, I offered to clean up, hoping for some time alone. My dad and Kyle headed to the boathouse to check on the jet skis, while my mom took Vanessa for a property tour. As I rinsed dishes, I gave myself a pep talk. I wouldn't let Kyle ruin this vacation. I'd maintain my dignity and distance. I wouldn't engage with his provocations. By my afternoon, the temperature was in the mid-80s, and the lake beckoned. I changed into a swimsuit, threw on a sundress, and headed to the dock with a book and towel. My plan was to find a quiet spot to read and dangle my feet in the water, far from family interactions. The dock was a substantial wooden structure extending about 50 feet into the lake. At the end was a covered sitting area with comfortable chairs and a small table. To the right, a ladder descended into the water. The wood felt warm under my bare feet as I walked to the farthest point, settling into a chair with my novel. For about 20 minutes, I enjoyed perfect solitude. The gentle lapping of water against the dock pilings created a soothing rhythm. I had just reached a particularly engaging chapter when I heard my brother's unmistakable heavy footsteps approaching. My body tensed automatically, a conditioned response to his presence. Kyle wasn't alone. He'd brought Vanessa and two cousins who'd arrived for the day. Jackson and Lily. They carried coolers and towels, clearly planning to take over the dock. I considered leaving, but decided that would look like surrender. Instead, I smiled politely and returned to my book, hoping they'd respect my space. That hope quickly vanished when Kyle cannonballed into the water just feet from me, sending a huge splash over my book and legs. I jerked back, protecting my novel as he surfaced with a wide grin. "Oh, sorry. Did I get you wet?" he asked, not sounding sorry at all. "It's a lake, you know. People tend to swim in it." Jackson laughed, though Lily shot me a sympathetic glance. Vanessa looked uncomfortable, shifting at the dock's edge. "I'm just reading," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "It's plenty of room for everyone." Kyle pulled himself up the ladder, water streaming from his 6-foot frame. At 31, he still had the athletic build from his football days, using it to physically dominate spaces just as he had as a child. "Reading at a lake house," he said loudly to the others. "That's so Natalie, always the boring one." My cheeks flushed, but I kept my eyes on my book, though I wasn't registering the words anymore. Kyle started organizing a game with the others. Something about diving for weighted objects he tossed into the water. With each passing minute, the game moved closer to where I sat, until they were shouting and splashing just feet away. When a dive ring landed in my lap, I knew it was no accident. I handed it back without comment, but Kyle wasn't satisfied with my non-reaction. "Why don't you join us, Nat?" he called. "Or are you afraid of getting your hair wet? Always so concerned about your appearance." This was rich, coming from someone who spent an hour on his hair each morning. But I bit back the retort. "Actually, I think I'll head back to the house," I said, gathering my things. "You all enjoy the game." As I stood to leave, Kyle blocked my path, water dripping from his swim trunks onto the dock. "Running away again?" he asked, his voice low enough only I could hear. Some things never change, do they? I tried to step around him, but he shifted slightly, maintaining the blockade while appearing casual to the others. "Move, Kyle," I said quietly. "Ask nicely," he taunted, a familiar refrain from childhood when he'd hold toys or food out of my reach. The others were watching now, the game forgotten. I felt the weight of their eyes, the silent judgment and confusion. I was instantly transported back to being 8 years old, humiliated and powerless. "Please move," I finally said, hating the tremor in my voice. Kyle stepped aside with an exaggerated bow. "Your Majesty," he said, always so sensitive. I walked past him with as much dignity as I could muster, feeling his eyes bore into my back. I was nearly at the shore end of the dock when his voice rang out again. "Hey, Nat, you forgot something." I turned automatically, and that was my mistake. Kyle was grinning, holding up my sunglasses, which had fallen from my beach bag. As I paused, he tossed them toward me, deliberately high and wide, so I had to lunge to catch them. The momentum carried me sideways, and for a moment I thought I'd fall into the water. I regained my balance and shot him a look of pure frustration. "Grow up, Kyle," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. His expression darkened. He never liked being challenged, especially publicly. I should have recognized the danger in his eyes, the same look he got before some of his worst childhood stunts. Instead, I turned and kept walking, thinking the confrontation was over. I didn't hear him follow me. The dock creaked under our combined weight, but I assumed it was just the normal settling of wood in the heat. I was 3 steps from the shore when I felt his presence directly behind me, too close, his breath on my neck. "You know what your problem is, Nat?" he said, his voice deceptively light. "You've always thought you were better than everyone else," and then he shoved me. The push came from behind with enough force to send me flying forward. Time seemed to slow as I lost my footing, arms windmilling uselessly. Instead of landing on the soft sand, my trajectory took me sideways. My right hip and shoulder slammed against the concrete foundation that anchored the dock to the shore, a raised edge I'd stepped over countless times without thought. The impact knocked the air from my lungs. A sickening crack resonated through my body as pain exploded across my right side. My head snapped back and connected with the hard edge, sending stars across my vision. I crumpled, sliding down to where the water met the shore, half submerged and completely stunned. For several seconds, I couldn't breathe. My lungs refused to expand, paralyzed by pain and shock. When air finally rushed back in, it brought with it a wave of nausea so intense I nearly vomited. The world spun violently around me as I tried to orient myself. Hot pain radiated from my lower back, spreading tendrils of agony down my legs and up my spine. My head throbbed with each heartbeat, and something warm trickled down my temple. Distantly, I heard laughter turn to concerned voices, then to shouts. Vanessa screaming, Lily calling my name, the splash of footsteps in shallow water. Up at most. Clearly, I heard Kyle saying it was just a joke. I barely touched her. I tried to sit up, but my body refused to cooperate. The pain intensified with every slight movement. Black spots danced at the edges of my vision as I struggled to remain conscious. Someone, I think it was Lily, cradled my head and told me not to move. The commotion brought my parents running from the house. My dad, still holding a beer, assessed the scene with obvious annoyance rather than concern. "What's going on?" "Here," he demanded, looking at the crowd, not me. His injured daughter. Kyle immediately launched into his defense. "We were just messing around, and she tripped. You know how clumsy she is?" My mom knelt beside me, but her face showed more embarrassment than worry. "Natalie," she hissed. "What happened?" I tried to form words through the pain. Kyle pushed me. I managed to gasp. I hit the concrete, my back and head. She looked at Kyle, who was already shaking his head. "I was just kidding around," he insisted. "She's fine. It just fell." Weird. My dad stepped closer, finally looking at me, curled in pain at the water's edge. His expression hardened. "Now walk it off." "You're fine," he growled. The same words he'd used throughout my childhood for everything from skinned knees to sprained ankles. "She does this for sympathy," Kyle added, addressing Vanessa and our cousins as if sharing an insider's secret about me. "Always has." Betrayal cut almost as deep as the physical pain. I'd spent a lifetime being disbelieved by the people who should have protected me. But somehow it still had the power to shock. My mom stood up, brushing sand from her linen pants. "She do anything to ruin a peaceful weekend?" she sighed.
Okay.
Natalie, when you're done with this display, we'll be having dinner in an hour. Tears sprang to my eyes from pain or humiliation or both. Please, I need help, I whispered. Something is really wrong. Jackson and Lily exchanged uncomfortable glances. Vanessa looked horrified. Kyle stared at the ground, jaw clenched. Number. One moved to help me. Finally, Lily broke ranks. I'll help her to her room, she offered, gesturing for Jackson to assist. My cousins carefully helped me to my feet, supporting my weight as pain shot through my back. Each step was agony, and by the time we reached the house, I was sweating and dizzy. They helped me to my bed, where Lily quietly asked if I wanted her to call a doctor. I declined, conditioned by years of being told I was overreacting. She left a glass of water and some over-the-counter pain relievers on the nightstand, promising to check on me later. Alone in my room, I curled into a fetal position, the only posture that somewhat alleviated the crushing pain in my back. I reached for my phone to text Emma, but my vision was too blurry to focus. The dizziness was getting worse. I swallowed the pain pills dry, praying they'd make even a small difference. From downstairs, I could hear life continuing as if nothing had happened, the clink of dishes, laughter from the deck, music. I was an afterthought, a minor inconvenience in their perfect family vacation. I drifted in and out of consciousness as afternoon turned to evening. At some point, I heard a soft knock, followed by Vanessa's timid voice asking if I needed anything. I couldn't summon the energy to respond. Later, I vaguely registered Lily checking on me, her concerned face swimming in and out of focus. Tried to tell her something was seriously wrong, but I couldn't form coherent sentences. Through the thin walls, I overheard snippets of dinner conversation. My dad's voice, she's always been the dramatic one. My mom's response, I don't know where we went wrong with her. Kyle's defensive tone, it was nothing, I swear. Anyone else would have laughed it off. Night fell, and the house eventually quieted. I lay awake, unable to find any position that didn't cause excruciating pain. The headache had intensified to a relentless pounding. More alarming, I noticed. I couldn't feel my toes properly. When I tried to wiggle them, the response was delayed and weak. Fear began to overtake pain as I realized something was seriously, dangerously wrong. I needed help, but years of conditioning made me hesitate to disturb my family again. They'd only accuse me of seeking attention, of ruining their vacation with my problems. So I suffered through the night alone, watching the digital clock mark each excruciating hour until dawn finally broke. By morning, the pain had evolved into something even more terrifying. My right leg was completely numb, while my left buzzed with pins and needles. The headache had localized to the back of my head, a spot that felt hot and swollen. When I tried to sit up, the room spun so violently, I immediately collapsed back onto the pillow. I heard the house coming to life around me. Footsteps, water, running, voices calling, "Good morning." No one checked on me until my mom briefly opened my door around 9 a.m. "We're all going hiking," she announced, not bothering to enter. "Will you be joining us, or are you still not feeling well?" The casual dismissal of my condition nearly broke me. "Mom, I think I need a doctor," I said, my voice sounding strange even to my own ears. "Something is really wrong. I can't feel my legs properly." She sighed dramatically. "Natalie, don't you think you're taking this too far? It was just a little fall." "You're ruining everyone's time with this behavior. I'm not making this up," I insisted, hearing the slur in my words but unable to correct it. "Please, Mom, I need help." "Your father says you're fine," she replied firmly. "You'll feel better if you get up and move around. Stop wallowing." With that, she closed the door, leaving me alone with my escalating terror. I tried again to reach my phone, but my arm felt leaden and uncooperative. The room was spinning. Faster now, black edges creeping into my vision. This was beyond pain, beyond anything I'd experienced. This was my body shutting down. The morning hours passed in a blur of increasing neurological symptoms. I drifted in and out of consciousness, each time waking to find my condition worse. The numbness had spread upward from my legs to my hips. The headache pulsed. Most frightening of all, my thoughts were becoming disorganized and slow, as if my brain was wading through molasses. Around 11 a.m., my father appeared in my doorway, clearly irritated I hadn't joined. "Everyone's having a great time except you," he stated flatly. "Your brother feels terrible that you're using a little horsing around to create all this drama." I tried to explain I physically couldn't get out of bed, that something was seriously wrong, but the words came out jumbled and slurred. This only seemed to reinforce his belief I was being theatrical. "You're ruining everyone's time," he said, crossing his arms. "Your mother is upset. Kyle is walking on eggshells and our guests are uncomfortable. Is that what you wanted?" The injustice of his accusation pierced through the fog in my brain. I hadn't asked to be injured. I hadn't asked to be disbelieved and abandoned when I needed help. But arguing was beyond my capabilities. I could only shake my head weakly, which sent fresh waves of pain and dizziness crashing over me. "Dad, please," I managed to whisper. "Hospital." His expression hardened. "Stop this nonsense and pull yourself together," he ordered before turning and leaving, shutting the door firmly. Alone again, panic set in. I knew with absolute certainty that something was catastrophically wrong. The symptoms went far beyond a simple fall. With tremendous effort, I managed to roll toward the nightstand where my phone lay charging. My fingers felt thick and unresponsive. I fumbled with the device, dropping it twice before holding it up. The screen swam before my eyes. I somehow navigated to my recent calls and pressed Emma's name, praying she'd answer. Each ring seemed an eternity. When her voice finally came through, cheerful and clear, I almost wept with relief. "Hey, stranger, how's the family vacation from hell going?" she greeted me. I tried to respond, but could only produce a garbled sound. "Emma," I slurred, the simple word requiring immense concentration. Her tone changed instantly. "Natalie, what's wrong? You sound strange." I forced each word out individually, fighting. My uncooperative mouth hurt. Kyle pushed. "Hit head back. Can't feel legs. No one believes." Emma's voice sharpened with alarm. "Natalie, you need an ambulance right now. Those are serious symptoms. Are your parents there?" "Won't help." I managed. "Think I'm lying?" I heard Emma moving on the other end, keys jingling, doors closing. "I'm calling emergency services right now," she said firmly. "Stay on the line with me. Throw haze." I heard her make another call, clearly explaining the situation and giving the lake house address, which she knew. Her voice was authoritative, cutting through questions with precise information. "They're on their way," she told me after the call. "About 15 minutes out. Need you to stay awake and on the phone with me, okay? Keep talking if you can." I tried to respond, but found darkness encroaching. The phone felt impossibly heavy. Emma's voice seemed to come from very far away, calling my name with increasing urgency. I wanted to answer, to thank her for being the one person who believed me, but I couldn't form the words. The next thing I remember is commotion. My bedroom door flying open. Unfamiliar voices, professional and urgent. Hands touching me, checking. Vitals, shining lights in my eyes. Words like unresponsive, dilated pupils, and spinal trauma floated above me. A cervical collar was placed around my neck, and I was carefully transferred to a backboard. As the paramedics worked, I caught glimpses of my family gathered in the doorway. My mother's pale face, hand covering her mouth. My father's stunned expression, all his certainty evaporated. Kyle, hanging back, looking both afraid and defensive. Their shock might have been satisfying under different circumstances, but I was too far gone to care. The female paramedic asked, Rapid-fire questions that my parents struggled to answer. When did this happen? Yesterday afternoon? What exactly occurred? She fell against the concrete edge of the dock. Has she been conscious? Yes, she was talking earlier. Did she complain of specific symptoms? Just said she was in pain. Did anyone monitor her through the night? Well, no. As they prepared to move me, the paramedic checked my pupils again and must not have liked what she saw. We need to move now, she told her partner. Possible TBI with increasing ICP. Notify the hospital. We'll need immediate imaging. Even in my deteriorating state, I registered my mother's voice, suddenly small and uncertain. Is she going to be all right? The paramedic was direct. She has symptoms of a serious traumatic brain injury and possible spinal trauma. She should have been brought in immediately after the accident. Every minute counts with these injuries. I felt myself being lifted, the movement sending fresh agony through my body, despite their careful handling. As they carried me through the house, my family followed their protests and explanations sounding hollow and desperate. We thought she was just being dramatic, my father was saying. She's always been sensitive. The male paramedic's response was professional but cold. Sir, these are objective neurological symptoms. There is nothing dramatic about them. They loaded me into the ambulance. Equipment beeping, voices urgent. Just before the doors closed, I heard Kyle's voice, defensive and frightened. It was just a joke. I didn't mean to hurt her. The female paramedic, establishing an IV in my arm, looked up sharply. This was no accident. Someone pushed her. There was a moment of stunned silence before my mother spoke. It was just siblings playing around, an accident. The paramedic returned her attention to me, but not before saying crisply, "You better call a lawyer." This is now a potential assault case with serious bodily injury. The ambulance doors closed on my family's shocked faces. As we began to move, sirens wailing, I felt myself slipping deeper into unconsciousness. The last thing I remember is the paramedic calling my name repeatedly, her voice growing more distant, and then nothing but darkness. I woke to the rhythmic beeping of medical equipment and the antiseptic smell of a hospital. Opening my eyes took tremendous effort, as if my eyelids were weighted. When I finally managed it, harsh fluorescent light sent daggers of pain through my skull, forcing me to close them again. Disorientation clouded my thoughts. Where was I? What happened? My body felt disconnected, present, but not quite under my control. Something uncomfortable was in my throat tubes and wires attached to me from multiple points. Panic began to rise until a calm voice broke through. "Natalie, can you hear me? Dr. Patel, you're in the hospital. You're safe. Try not to fight the breathing tube. It's helping you right now." I forced my eyes open again, more carefully. A woman in a white coat stood beside my bed, her expression kind yet serious. When she saw my eyes focus, she smiled slightly. "Good, you're coming back to us. I'll ask the nurse to get the respiratory therapist so we can evaluate removing that breathing tube. Just try to stay calm for a few more minutes." True to her word, moments later, more medical personnel entered. Removing the breathing tube was unpleasant but quick. A nurse offered ice chips to soothe my raw throat. Each tiny movement sent waves of pain from my back, but my mind was clearing, memories returning in disjointed fragments. The lake house, Kyle pushing me, hitting my head, the paramedics, then nothing. When the room quieted with just Dr. Patel and a nurse, the doctor pulled up a chair. "Natalie, you've been unconscious for nearly 36 hours, she explained gently. "You were brought in with a traumatic brain injury and spinal trauma. We had to perform emergency surgery to relieve pressure on your brain from intracranial bleeding. You also have a fracture in your thoracic spine at T11 and T12. I tried to process this through the fog of pain medication. Surgery, spinal fracture. The severity was difficult to comprehend. My legs?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. Dr. Patel's expression remained neutral. There's significant swelling around your spinal cord. This is causing the numbness and weakness in your lower extremities. Until the swelling decreases, we won't know the full extent of the neurological impact. But you should know you arrived just in time. If treatment had been delayed much longer, the damage could have been permanent or even fatal. The weight of how close I'd come to dying settled over me. A tear slipped down my cheek. The nurse quietly handed me a tissue as Dr. Patel continued. Explaining my condition, she mentioned something that caught my attention. The MRI also showed evidence of several previously healed fractures, she said, her tone shifting, particularly in your ribs and left wrist. These appeared to be from different incidents over a period of years. I froze, tissue clutched in my hand. Those were from Kyle's previous jokes, the time he pushed me down the stairs at 7. The baseball he threw at my ribs when I was 12, incidents my parents had dismissed, injuries I'd been told to walk off. Dr. Patel watched my reaction. Natalie, the pattern of injuries we're seeing is concerning, she said gently. Both the current trauma and the historical evidence. The hospital social worker would like to speak with you when you feel up to it. I nodded slightly, the movement sending fresh pain through my skull. Before we could continue, loud, insistent voices in the hallway interrupted us, demanding information about my condition. My family had arrived. Dr. Patel stood. I'll speak. With them, she said. Would you like them to come in, or do you need more time? The thought of facing them sent a spike of anxiety, but I knew this confrontation was inevitable. Just not all at once, I whispered. 1 or 2 at a time. She nodded, understanding, and left. Through the partially open door, I heard her, explaining visiting restrictions. Then my parents' voices, demanding and entitled, as always. I closed my eyes, gathering what little strength I had. My mother entered first. My father closed behind. They stopped several feet from the bed, unsure how to approach this new, broken version of their daughter. My mother looked like she'd aged. Years in 2 days. Her perfect appearance disheveled. My father seemed smaller, his confident posture replaced with an uncertain slump. Oh, Natalie, my mother breathed, her eyes taking in the bandages, monitors, and IV lines. We had no idea. The simplicity of that statement encapsulated our entire relationship. They had never seen me, never believed me, never taken my pain seriously. And now they stood before irrefutable medical evidence that couldn't be dismissed as dramatic or attention-seeking. My father cleared his throat. The doctors say you had bleeding in your brain, he said, as if confirming information. He still couldn't quite believe. And your back is broken. Fractured, I corrected, my voice still barely a whisper. To vertebrae. An uncomfortable silence fell. What could they possibly say now? That I should walk it off? That I was ruining their vacation? The absurdity of their previous dismissals hung in the air. A nurse entered to check my vitals, working efficiently. My parents shifted awkwardly. When she left, my mother stepped closer. We didn't know, she repeated, as if this absolved them. How could we have known it was this serious? I tried to laugh, but it came out as a pained cough. I told you I managed. I begged for help. My father's face flushed. You've always been sensitive about these things, he said defensively. How are we supposed to know? This time was different, I retorted. Before I could finish, the door opened and Kyle stood there, looking uncharacteristically small. His confident swagger was gone, replaced by hesitant, almost timid body language. When he saw me surrounded by medical equipment, his face strained. Jesus, Nat, he whispered. I didn't mean to. Was just supposed to be a joke. His words ignited something in me, a lifetime of suppressed anger, breaking through the fog of medication. A joke, I repeated, my voice stronger, fueled by rage. Was it a joke when you pushed me down the stairs when I was 7? Was it a joke when you threw that baseball at my ribs so hard it fractured them? Was it a joke every time you hurt me and they told me to stop being dramatic? Kyle stepped back as if physically struck. The color returned to his face in a flush of red. I didn't push you that hard, he insisted, familiar defensiveness creeping back. You must have lost your balance or something. At that moment, Dr. Patel returned with another woman, Sandra Torres, the hospital social worker. Dr. Patel took in attention with a practiced eye. I need to discuss Natalie's MRI results with all of you, she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. The images show not only her current injuries, but also a pattern of previous trauma that raises serious concerns. She pulled up images on a tablet, pointing out current fractures and brain bleeding. Then she switched to different views, highlighting old injuries, healed fractures in 3 ribs, evidence of an old green stick fracture in my left wrist, signs of previous trauma to my right shoulder. These injuries, she explained, are consistent with a pattern of physical trauma over many years. They tell a concerning story of repeated injuries. A mother gasped softly. Kyle shook his head in denial. My father's face went blank, a sign of extreme stress I recognized from childhood. Dr. Torres stepped forward. In cases like this, we are required to document and report patterns that suggest potential abuse, she explained calmly. Like to ask you some questions about how these injuries occurred. What exactly are you implying? My father demanded, finally finding his voice. Dr. Torres met his gaze. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating that your daughter has physical evidence of multiple traumatic injuries over many years, culminating in life-threatening trauma that was left untreated for nearly 24 hours. We have a legal and ethical obligation to understand how this happened. My mother suddenly turned to Kyle, her expression shifting from shock to something else. Entirely. She didn't look at me or the doctors. Better call a lawyer, she said to my brother, her voice barely audible. The room fell silent. In that moment, something broke permanently between us. Not just my spine or the blood vessels in my brain, but the pretense that we had ever been a normal, loving family. My mother wasn't concerned about justice for me, or horrified by the years of abuse. Her first instinct was to protect Kyle, to circle the wagons against outside scrutiny. Dr. Patel suggested my parents and Kyle speak with Dr. Torres in another room. As they filed out, each avoiding my eyes, I felt a strange sense of validation wash over me. The MRI had revealed more than just my current injuries. It had exposed the truth I'd been trying to tell for 28 years. Left alone, I closed my eyes. The pain was excruciating, but for the first time I was being believed. The evidence was literally written in my bones, irrefutable proof that I hadn't been making it up, hadn't been too sensitive, hadn't been seeking attention. I had been a victim. And now everyone knew it. A soft knock roused me. Emma stood there, her face drawn with worry, a small overnight bag in her hand. She'd flown in from Chicago the moment she heard I was hospitalized. Oh, Nat, she whispered, carefully taking my hand. I'm so sorry this happened to you. In that moment, the contrast between her genuine concern and my family's calculated reactions couldn't have been starker. Emma had believed me instantly over the phone. She had taken action when my own family had abandoned me. She had probably saved my life. You were right all along, I told her, squeezing her hand weakly. They were never going to see me. She nodded, tears in her eyes. But now everyone else will, she promised, and I'm not going anywhere. As exhaustion pulled me back to sleep, one thought remained clear. The MRI had revealed the truth, not just about my injuries, but about my entire life. And somehow, through the pain and betrayal, I felt the first fragile threads of liberation beginning to form. The days following my diagnosis blurred in a haze of pain meds, procedures, and hospital staff. My condition stabilized enough to move from ICU to a regular neurological floor. The road to recovery stretched endlessly. Spinal fractures would need months of healing, followed by intensive physical therapy. The traumatic brain injury, while no longer life-threatening, left me with headaches, memory issues, and occasional word-finding difficulty. Through it all, Emma remained a constant presence, advocating for me, asking questions I forgot, and providing the emotional support my family never did. She took a leave from her job to stay in a nearby hotel, refusing to leave until I was out of danger. My family, in contrast, entered a strange orbit around me, appearing for brief, uncomfortable visits before disappearing. My parents hired an expensive attorney who advised them to limit what they said. My mom brought flowers and magazines but avoided real conversation. My dad spoke mostly to doctors, focusing on prognosis rather than what happened. Kyle stopped coming after the third day, sending generic get-well cards through my mother. The legal consequences unfolded almost immediately. Detective Sarah Wilkins from local police interviewed me, recording my statement with professional detachment. She explained that given my severe injuries, they were investigating as potential felony assault. "Can family members be charged?" I asked, still struggling. "To see my brother as a criminal." "Absolutely," she confirmed. "Family relationship doesn't exempt someone from responsibility for causing serious bodily harm, especially with injuries as severe as yours." Later that week, I learned Kyle was formally charged with assault causing serious bodily injury. My parents posted his bail, hired him a separate attorney, and were mounting an aggressive defense centered on the incident being a harmless prank gone wrong. This information came not from my family, but from Dr. Torres, who became an unexpected ally. She visited regularly to check on my emotional well-being and connect me with resources for survivors of family violence. Victims of long-term family abuse often struggle with accepting what happened to them was actually abuse, she explained. There's a process of recognition and grief that can be very challenging. "I'm not sure I qualify as abused," I argued weakly. "It was just my brother being a jerk and my parents not believing me." Dr. Torres regarded me thoughtfully. "Natalie, if a stranger had pushed you and caused these injuries, would you hesitate to call it assault? If parents ignored their child's internal bleeding and fractured spine for 24 hours despite pleas for help, would you question whether that was neglect?" Put that way, it was harder to minimize what happened. Still, years of conditioning made it difficult to apply those labels to my own experience. My family had always operated on the premise that everything was normal, that I was the problem. Dismantling that narrative was as painful as my physical injuries. 2 weeks into my hospital stay, my parents requested a family meeting. Dr. Torres offered to be present, which I gratefully accepted. We gathered in a small conference room, me in a wheelchair, my parents stiffly formal across the table. My mother spoke first, her words clearly rehearsed. "Natalie, we want you to know. We love you very much and never meant for any of this to happen. We hope you can find it in your heart to forgive the family and help us move past this unfortunate incident." The clinical detachment struck me. The family. This unfortunate incident, no acknowledgement of Kyle's actions or their neglect. No real accountability. "What exactly are you asking me to forgive?" I questioned, finding strength in Dr. Torres's calm presence. My father shifted uncomfortably. "We know you're upset, and you have every right to be, but pressing charges against your brother will tear this family apart. He's looking at serious jail time if this goes forward. So, I was being asked to protect Kyle again, to put his well-being above mine again." "Did you know," I said slowly, "that the doctors told me if Emma hadn't called that ambulance, I would likely have died or been permanently paralyzed within hours?" My parents exchanged glances. We didn't realize how serious it was. My mother repeated the familiar refrain. "No," I corrected. "You chose not to believe me. There's a difference." My father leaned forward, his business negotiation face taking over. "Natalie, we're prepared to cover all your medical expenses. Whatever rehabilitation you need, the best facilities, everything. All we ask is that you tell the prosecutor it was an accident, that you don't want to press charges against your brother. The transactional nature of the offer crystallized everything wrong with our relationship. They weren't there because they cared about my pain or recognized the harm. They were there to protect Kyle and the family image, offering money for my silence. For the first time, I found myself completely unmoved by their disapproval or manipulation. Perhaps it was the brush with death, the validation from medical professionals, or simply the cumulative weight of 28 years of gaslighting. Finally, too heavy to bear. Whatever the cause, I felt a strange new power in my broken body. "I can't do that," I said, my voice steady. "I won't lie about what happened." Kyle pushed me deliberately, as he has countless times. The only difference is this time, I nearly died, and there are medical records to prove it. My father's face darkened with familiar anger. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us." "By trying to send your brother to prison?" I met his gaze without flinching. "What have you done for me exactly?" Ignored my pain, dismissed my concerns. It's taught me my experiences don't matter, made me question my own reality. Those aren't things I feel particularly grateful for. My mother began to cry the tears I'd seen so often, the ones that always made me back down. This time I watched with detached curiosity, recognizing the manipulation. "I don't want Kyle to go to prison," I clarified. "I just want the truth acknowledged. I want accountability. I want to stop pretending that systematically hurting someone and calling it a joke is normal or acceptable." Dr. Torres nodded imperceptibly, a small gesture of support. "I will tell the prosecutor exactly what happened," I said firmly. "That Kyle deliberately pushed me, as he has many times before. That I asked for medical help repeatedly and was denied it. What happens after that is up to the legal system, not me." My father stood abruptly. "You'll regret this, Natalie. When the media gets hold of it, when our family name is dragged through the mud. When Kyle's life is ruined, you'll regret choosing strangers over your own blood." I looked up at him, this man who had loomed so large in my childhood fears, and felt nothing but pity. "You had so many chances to choose me, to protect me, to believe me," I said quietly. "You made your choice long before we ended up here." They left without further discussion, my mother tearful, my father rigid with anger. Dr. Torres stayed behind. "That was incredibly brave," she said. Setting boundaries with family is one of the hardest things we ever do. I didn't feel brave. I felt exhausted, sad, and somehow relieved all at once. For the first time, I had spoken my truth without apologizing, without minimizing it. The cost would be high, but the alternative, continuing to accept the unacceptable, would cost even more. Over the following weeks, my parents made more attempts at persuasion. They sent relatives, suggested a settlement, even tried to engage Emma. None of it worked. With each attempt, my resolve strengthened. The prosecutor's office moved forward, bolstered by medical evidence and witness statements from Vanessa and my cousins. 3 months after the fall, still in outpatient physical therapy and learning to navigate life with ongoing neurological symptoms, I received an unexpected visitor. Kyle had come alone, without our parents' knowledge, requesting to speak privately. Against Emma's better judgment, I agreed to meet him in a public cafe with ramp access. He looked terrible, weight lost, dark circles under his eyes. He fidgeted with a napkin, unable to hold my gaze. "I didn't come to ask you to drop the charges," he began, surprising me. "I came to tell you I'm pleading guilty. No trial." I waited. He took a deep breath. "I did it," he admitted, staring at the shredded napkin. "Not just at the lake, all of it. I hurt you on purpose, over and over, because I could. Because it made me feel powerful when they always took my side. Because they let me." The admission, so simple, yet profound, left me speechless. After decades of denial, just a joke, and you're too sensitive, hearing the plain truth was shocking. "Why are you telling me this now?" I finally asked. He looked up, meeting my eyes. "Because I have to live with what I did to you." And because you deserve to hear someone in this family say it. I was wrong. It was not a joke. It was abuse. The word hung between us. The one I'd been so reluctant to apply to myself, now spoken aloud by the person who inflicted it. Tears filled my eyes, not from sadness, but from the profound relief of validation. Kyle explained he'd been attending mandatory therapy as part of his pre-sentencing requirements. For the first time, he was forced to examine his behavior and its impact to confront the person he'd become. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he clarified. I just wanted you to know that at least one person in this family is finally telling the truth. I nodded, unable to find adequate words. We didn't embrace when he left. Too much was broken between us for that kind of reconciliation, if it were ever possible. But as I watched him walk away, a knot loosened deep inside me, a burden shifting. 2 weeks later, Kyle was sentenced to 18 months in a minimum security facility, with 3 years probation and mandatory anger management. My parents didn't speak to me after the sentencing. The family fractured along lines that had always existed beneath the surface, revealed by trauma-like fault lines in an earthquake. I grieved the family I'd always wanted but never had. Yet in that grief, I found a strange freedom. The truth, however painful, had finally been spoken. The reality I'd questioned for so long was validated by medical records, legal proceedings, and Kyle's own admission. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't too sensitive. I had been hurt repeatedly and deliberately by the people who should have protected me. As winter turned to spring, I focused on rebuilding, physically and emotionally. Each day brought small victories, steps taken without assistance, clear memories, boundaries maintained. I learned to trust my perceptions again, to believe my own experience without needing external validation. It was slow, painful work, but for the first time, I was doing it on my terms, without the distorting lens of family gaslighting. 1 year after the fall that nearly claimed my life, I stood at the edge of a different lake, watching sunlight dance across the water. My balance wasn't perfect, and I used a cane for longer walks, but I was standing something the initial. Prognosis questions might ever be possible. Physical recovery had been grueling. 3 surgeries, 6 months of physical therapy, occupational therapy for lingering TBI effects, and pain management for chronic discomfort. Yet, the physical challenges proved easier than the emotional ones. Healing my body involved medical advice and pushing through pain. Healing my heart and mind meant confronting a lifetime of gaslighting. Dr. Harris, my trauma therapist, became an essential guide. In our sessions, we unpacked not just the lake incident, but years of emotional abuse. When someone repeatedly tells you your pain isn't real, your perceptions are wrong, your feelings invalid, you begin to distrust yourself, she explained. Rebuilding that self-trust is the foundation of healing from gaslighting. The work was painful but transformative. I learned to question self-doubt, to trust my emotional responses, and stop dismissing myself as dramatic. I started a journal, documenting my experience as a concrete record that couldn't be rewritten by someone else's narrative. My new apartment became a sanctuary, a space entirely my own, decorated with artwork and arranged for my physical needs. Its accessibility features, once reminders of injury, became simply part of my comfortable, independent home. My career took an unexpected turn. Unable to return to demanding agency work immediately, I began freelancing from home. This selective approach attracted clients who valued quality over speed. 6 months in, I had a thriving independent business with a waiting list, working fewer hours but earning more. Most importantly, I built a chosen family, Emma, whose call saved my life, remained my closest friend, her unwavering support a cornerstone of my recovery. New friends entered my life through support groups and shared interests, people who knew my story and respected my boundaries. Colleagues became confidants, neighbors became friends. Slowly, a network of genuine connection replaced the toxic bonds I'd broken. My parents made one final reconciliation attempt for months after Kyle began his sentence. They arrived unannounced, bearing gifts and platitudes about families sticking together. When I asked if they acknowledged their role in enabling decades of abuse, they deflected, focusing on their difficulties. I set clear boundaries. I'd consider rebuilding only if they attended family therapy, acknowledged the harm, and committed to change. They declined, unwilling to examine their own behavior, preferring denial to accountability. It was the last time we spoke directly. I heard updates occasionally through extended family who maintained connections with both sides. My mother buried herself in social obligations. My father threw himself into work. They told everyone their daughter turned against the family because of a misunderstanding, a narrative preserving their image while erasing reality. Kyle surprisingly took a different path. From prison, he wrote letters. I didn't read them at first, not ready. Months later, I found not excuses or pleas for forgiveness, but accounts of his therapy, realizations about our family dynamics, and acceptance of responsibility. I didn't respond immediately, unsure if engaging would help my healing. But I kept the letters evidence of a truth finally acknowledged. On the anniversary of the fall, I went to a different lake, similar enough to confront the memories. As I stood watching the water, I reflected on how much had changed. Physical pain remained a daily reminder, but the emotional clarity I'd gained was worth every painful step. I learned pain could be a messenger, highlighting what needed care, not denial. I discovered believing yourself, even when no one else does, is profound courage. I found family can be chosen, built on respect, not obligation. Most importantly, I'd reclaimed my voice, my truth, my power to define my own reality. No one would ever again convince me to doubt my experience or minimize my pain, okay? No relationship was worth the price of my self-trust and dignity. As I turned to leave, leaning slightly on my cane, a woman watching me asked, "Do you need help?" A year ago, I'd have denied it, afraid of appearing weak. Today, I smiled and said, "Yes, actually, this part's a bit tricky with the cane. Thank you for asking." She walked beside me, making casual conversation. When we reached the parking area, she wished me well. It struck me then how simple kindness could be. Seeing a need, offering help without judgment, accepting help without shame. The basic human kindness my family never offered, given freely by a stranger. Home, I opened my laptop and began writing my story. Not for my family who might never truly hear it. Not even primarily for other survivors, though I hoped it might help them. I wrote it for myself, to cement the truth I now held firm. I deserved better. We all do. Today, I continue to build a life defined by truth, not denial. By boundaries, not obligation, by genuine connection, not toxic loyalty. The journey is ongoing, with steps forward and occasional slides back. But the direction remains clear. Forward, toward healing, toward truth, toward a life where pain is acknowledged, needs are valid, and reality isn't up for negotiation. If my story resonates with you, please know you're not alone. Trust your own experience, even when others deny it. Your pain is real. Your perceptions matter. Your truth deserves to be spoken. Have you ever had to stand firm in your truth when others tried to rewrite it? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story helped you feel less alone, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for witnessing my journey, and I wish you strength and validation on yours.